When President Trump took office, he made several shocking plans that surprised the world, one of which was to take back control of the Panama Canal. This plan was not only opposed by the Panamanian government, but also faced a lot of criticism. Recently, the Hong Kong-based Cheung Kong Group, which controls the ports at both ends of the Panama Canal, announced it had reached a deal with the American asset management company BlackRock. They agreed to sell 43 ports in 23 countries for $19 billion. This includes 199 berths, smart dock management systems, and a global logistics network. Of course, it also includes the ports at both ends of the Panama Canal. The main owner of Cheung Kong Group is Li Ka-shing. So, who is Li Ka-shing? How closely are his port businesses tied to China? And what does it mean that he's quickly selling off ports around the world? Today, we'll dive into these questions and discuss what's really going on. But before we do, we would like to invite you to subscribe. Your support is our greatest motivation and allows us to bring you more valuable content. Now, moving on. Li Ka-shing's background. Li Ka-shing was born on July 29, 1928 in Chaozhou, Guangdong, China. Due to the impact of war, he and his family fled to Hong Kong when he was young. After his father passed away from illness, Li had to drop out of school and start working to support his family. At the age of 22, in 1955, Li Ka-shing started his first company, Cheung Kong Plastic Factory, which initially focused on plastic flowers. Over time, it grew into the Cheung Kong Group. The group expanded into a huge multinational company involved in real estate, ports, energy, retail, and telecommunications. Today, the group is one of the biggest companies in Hong Kong with operations in 54 countries, 240,000 employees, and 8 listed companies in Hong Kong. Li Ka-shing is often called Superman Li in Hong Kong, and his motto is, "There are only profitable businesses, not forever businesses." This means that making a profit is the most important thing, and when an industry is no longer profitable or is phased out, you need to quickly shift focus. To stay ahead of the game and spot new opportunities, Li has a remarkable ability to see trends and make smart decisions early on. His business successes have made him one of the most influential entrepreneurs in the Chinese-speaking world. In 2022, Forbes released its annual list of Hong Kong's 50 richest people, and Li Ka-shing continued to top the list with a net worth of approximately $36 billion. However, in an interview, Li mentioned that his true wealth was probably underestimated by at least half. Foreign magazines often report on my wealth, but for at least the last 10 years, they've been underestimating it by half. Why? Because they claim Husky Energy isn't mine. But actually, I'm the largest shareholder. This company is even bigger than my Hong Kong-based Hisense company. These are private assets. I didn't correct them because it's better for those magazines to undervalue my wealth a little. There's no point in saying too much. Also, 100% of the money in my foundation comes from my personal funds, which makes up about 1/3 of my wealth. So far, I've donated HK 14.5 billion, and the remaining amount is much more than that. The magazines only counted the public stock of Hisense company, but didn't take into account my private investments, including investments in new technologies. I've been saying this for 10 years, it's probably better they haven't noticed. What port businesses does Li Ka-shing have around the world? Li Ka-shing's first entry into the port business started in 1979 when he purchased Hutchison Whampoa, a British-owned company that controlled the port operations of the UK's Iron Bank Group. In 1991, after purchasing the UK's major container port Felixstowe, Li expanded his port operations rapidly across the globe, building one of the world's largest international port empires. In addition to China and Hong Kong, Li owns many ports across Europe with major operations in countries like the Netherlands, Germany, the UK, and Poland. He controls key ports that connect Europe to global shipping routes, including important military aid routes from the US to Ukraine. Li has also a strong presence in the Middle East and Africa, owning ports in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, which are part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, helping to create a global investment network. In Latin America, Li has acquired several ports in Panama and the Bahamas, located at strategic global shipping crossroads impacting shipping routes around the United States. By 2023, Li Ka-shing's port empire spanned 24 countries and included 53 ports, playing a vital role in global trade and major shipping hubs. How does Li Ka-shing's port strategy align with the CCP's global expansion? On January 22nd, Radio Free Asia published an article titled, "How Deep Are Li Ka-shing's Port Connections with China? Hong Kong Companies Have Lost International Credibility," which explained, Li Ka-shing's port operations are closely linked to the CCP's efforts to expand its influence overseas. For example, between 1999 and 2012, as China grew and started to push into Latin America, traditionally seen as the backyard of the United States, the idea of a China threat began to spread internationally. During this time, Li Ka-shing heavily expanded his port and energy infrastructure in Latin America, including in countries like Panama, Paraguay, and the Bahamas, many of which were still diplomatic allies of Taiwan. Notably, 1997 was the year Li Ka-shing began investing in the Bahamas, and it was also the year the country broke ties with Taiwan. In 2017, after nearly a decade of controlling key ports along the Panama Canal, Panama cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan and quickly established relations with China, becoming the first Latin American country to join China's Belt and Road Initiative. Since then, Chinese private and state-owned companies have poured investments into building cruise terminals and bridges across the Panama Canal, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. How connected are Li Ka-shing's ports to the Chinese government? An article from Radio Free Asia also pointed out, Li Ka-shing's global port empire built in Hong Kong is now viewed as a Chinese company by the international community and has become a target for many countries. Li Ka-shing's port business grew for two main reasons. First, he gained China's trust by supporting key Chinese initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative. And second, he earned international trust by presenting his company Hutchison Whampoa as a Hong Kong-based business under the One Country, Two Systems framework, rather than a representative of China. Beijing used Hong Kong's unique position as a middleman, and Li Ka-shing was able to fill this role effectively. However, over time, Li Ka-shing, once seen as a successful example of Hong Kong being backed by China while engaging with the world, is no longer viewed the same way internationally. In 2023, a container terminal in Poland controlled by Li Ka-shing refused to allow U.S. Navy ships carrying supplies to Ukraine to dock. This led the Polish government to investigate whether the decision was influenced by instructions from Beijing. Taiwan's National Defense Security Research Institute associate researcher Shi Jianyu said, Li Ka-shing's past success wasn't due to his own abilities, he also had the support of his country. Western countries knew this but tolerated it because of Hong Kong's advantages and Li's business power. However, after the 2019 anti-extradition protests and the national security law in Hong Kong, Western countries no longer view Hong Kong as one country, two systems, and it's lost its autonomy. Now, it's harder for Li Ka-shing to be trusted internationally as a Hong Kong businessman. Shanghai entrepreneur Hu Li-ren, who now lives in the United States and once worked as an executive in Li Ka-shing's company, has shared some little-known secrets. I joined Li Ka-shing's invested company in Shanghai called Meya Online in 1999. Its parent company is called Tom. This company is unique. Li Ka-shing owns 50% of the shares, meaning it's part of Tom, and the other 50% is owned by the Chinese Communist Party's Public Security and National Security departments. That's how the ownership is structured. Li Ka-shing's company has always worked closely with the Chinese Communist Party. Many of the CCP's global strategies, especially their port developments, are linked to Li Ka-shing. It's also possible that there were other investments involved. The CCP started its United Front work with Li Ka-shing as early as the 1980s and 1990s. I once met a person responsible for United Front work in Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. He's a business partner of mine named He Shintong, a descendant of He Long and part of the second generation of the Chinese Communist Party. Given his background, I believe Li Ka-shing has long been a target of their United Front efforts because there have been actual project collaborations between them. Li Ka-shing isn't just an ordinary capitalist. His relationship with Jiang Zemin is very close. He could be Jiang's middleman. People often wonder where Jiang Zemin's assets are, and I believe Li Ka-shing controls some of them. Before Xi Jinping came to power, Li Ka-shing had already lost confidence in China's economy. He had many assets in China, and long before others realized it, he'd already sold them off and cashed out. Why did Li Ka-shing sell most of his ports so quickly and decisively? Let's not talk about the profits of ports in other countries for now. Just looking at the data from the 2 ports at the Panama Canal tells the story. According to a report from the Panama Canal Authority, in the 2024 fiscal year, 9,944 large ships passed through the canal. The total revenue was $4.986 billion, with a net income of $3.453 billion. This was a business that made money almost effortlessly, so why did Li Ka-shing decide to sell so quickly? Hu Li Ren suggests 2 possible reasons. First, Li Ka-shing might have sensed the looming risk of war. Second, he may have completely cut ties with the Chinese Communist Party. These businessmen are what we call red-top businessmen. They receive information much faster and more accurately than the rest of us. This time, Li Ka-shing sold off all his ports, which makes me think he's already sensing the possibility of war. Typically, investments in port businesses are stable and reliable. If someone suddenly sells them, it usually means they expect a sharp downturn or collapse. That's why he chose to sell everything. I think there are 2 reasons why he might have sold so many port businesses. First, if a global war or large-scale conflict breaks out, the economy will likely take a hit. He may be selling off assets now to avoid losses, and after the war, when prices are lower, he could buy them back. This might be part of his strategy, and it serves as a warning to everyone. There's also another possibility we should consider. Li Ka-shing might have completely cut ties with the Chinese Communist Party. I believe that his global port investments have always had political backing from the Chinese government. But if he lost support, or if there was a falling out with the party, it makes sense that he would sell off all his ports at once. Veteran journalist Guo Juan commented, "With President Trump's pressure on China, Li Ka-shing likely saw that tough times were ahead. Selling his ports quickly while prices were still high was probably the smart thing to do." In President Trump's recent executive order on U.S. investment policy, he specifically said that the U.S. must prevent assets with strategic value from being acquired by the Chinese Communist Party. This includes not only Chinese companies but also businesses from Hong Kong and Macau. The strategic assets mentioned in the policy aren't just in the U.S. but globally, and ports are on the top of the list. The Panama Canal is an example. As long as the ports are within reach of the Americans, Chinese companies are likely to face tough times in the future. So Li Ka-shing may have decided to sell these assets now while the prices are still high. It's not just ports. Li Ka-shing's companies also invest in power, energy, and telecommunications, which are also considered strategic assets. His businesses like Hutchison Whampoa have investments in places like Europe, Canada, and Australia, which could face similar challenges in the future. If US-China tensions get worse or even lead to conflict, these assets could be in danger. Li Ka-shing will need to figure out how to manage them based on his assessment of the future global situation. Li Juan, an American TV producer, also believes that the US-China rivalry will affect the whole world, and Li Ka-shing doesn't want to become a casualty in that conflict. It might be smart for him to distance himself as soon as possible. Li Ka-shing's business strategy and decisions are very clear. Right now, the Panama Canal has become a key point in the US-China rivalry. As a smart businessman, Li Ka-shing knows he can't upset either side. Ports were once a big part of Li's business empire, but now the US sees the Chinese Communist Party as having control over the Panama Canal. Being caught in the middle must be tough for him. Li Ka-shing is very clever. With the US-China rivalry being global, other countries' ports could also become a focus. To avoid problems, he may have decided to sell all of his ports at once. This move could be seen as doing a favor for Trump, which is why Trump happily announced that the US had regained control of the Panama Canal. That's all for today. If you enjoy our content, please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment, or share it with your friends. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.